After much anticipation, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth came out and got great reception from fans and reviews. But how did I feel about it? Well, let's go right into it. After many years of waiting, we got the FF7 remake in 2020 and did a lot at the time. It brought a lot of spirit to characters which people wanted to see. But it also brought many questions. How will combat be improved? How will the world exploration be? How many parts will it take to complete it? With part 1, we knew that heading into it, it was ending with the Midgar escape, but we really had no idea just how much we were left anticipating. But after part 1's ending, we knew it would be a while before we see what's next. A year later in June 2021, we got the integrated DLC which introduced Yuffie into the remake. This DLC was great. I mentioned it a little bit in my remake video, but it was fun. It gave us a preview as to how the gameplay might look later in part 2, and at the end, we got a preview as to how things might go with the story. But again, it was back to the waiting game. Then in 2022, it was announced there was going to be a 25th anniversary event for FF7. It had FF7 remake producer Katase talking about many things FF7 related, like new merch and new things regarding other stuff. This was also where we got the reveal of FF7 Crisis Core Reunion, which is a remaster of the original back in 2007, which is also something I covered on the channel. I very much liked it. To end out the event, we were shown a teaser of FF7 Remake Part 2, which was called FF7 Rebirth. It was also shown off that the games were going to be a trilogy, which was predicted by some, but it was good getting that confirmation after all these years. Then in June 2023 at Summer Games Fest, we got the full reveal and we started to get more information. This leads to the release date, which was February 29th, 2024. With that said, let's get into the game itself. The game is an action role-playing game set in its own universe. Something I will say is that if you want full immersion for it, there is an assumption that you will know Remake Part 1, either through playing it, which I recommend, or through the recap in the main menu. However, with this video, I won't be talking about spoilers in Rebirth. After the intro, the story starts off with a flashback. We have Cloud reciting the events that happened 5 years before in his hometown Nibelheim, where he and Sephiroth were sent to investigate the Maka reactor. But since they are at his hometown, Cloud decides to look around and see what he has missed. He goes around seeing his mom and also Zangan, Tifa's mentor. This stuff is great to see. The next day arrives where they go to the reactor along with Tifa, also having this be the tutorial to the game's main combat. Once they get up to the reactor, Sephiroth realizes after connecting the dots that he was created with Genova cells, and upon reading more, he sets his sight on finding his mother, while destroying the town, taking out everyone. Cloud then catches up to him, but that's it. Cloud doesn't remember what happens after. The party then rests up for the night, and after escaping calm, they resume the unknown journey. Once again, just like with Remake, everyone did a great job. The character interactions are really fun with both the main cast and others. With a whole world to explore this time, you can see a lot of the set pieces you may or may not be familiar with. Plus, characters from Remake also make appearances. And the major thing to mention with regards to the story is that if you have played the OG, Rebirth goes up to the end of Disc 1, so all of Disc 1 will be here. And if you are someone who has played the compilation of FF7, there are a lot of great moments. Plus, some of the new story moments in the game are good. If I had to give critiques, however, I will say the pacing can be wild, but even worse is the tonal shifts. Certain scenes work really well, and then switches tone in such a way where it's jarring. It's just something, especially on a second playthrough, you really notice it. So I do think that while the story is good, the shifts in tone can be a lot. Plus, there are a few set pieces I don't think land well either. A new mechanic they introduce in Rebirth is the affinity system with Cloud. Throughout the story and side stuff, you build up relationships with the party. The way this happens is by dialogue choices, side quests, etc. If it's built up enough, you will get extra scenes, which is cool. The indicator for the affinity is the icon above each party member. Now with this said, let's get into the gameplay. Since we have a world to explore, one might wonder how much there is. When you step out of calm, you truly get to grasp just how much there is. And while you can do just the main story stuff and get through it, having a lot of content does help. The main story is indicated with blue markers, whereas everything else is side stuff. The world is also divided into 6 regions, but they all have the same checklist sort of stuff. When you encounter Chadley, you'll be informed that the world has towers that need to be activated in order to gather intel. This intel varies from combat fights, discoveries, summon crystals, and more. Yes, the VR simulator is back and with a lot of challenges and rewards. A lot of this usually builds towards something. Like if you do the intel for combat fights, you get a tough enemy at the end of it. And the rewards are pretty nice. Something that also helps is getting the chocobo for each region. This helps getting to certain areas you cannot get to before. It also unlocks fast travel. Then you have just the regular side quests, which give good stuff. These side quests provide nice stories, but also give out good rewards, like access to new weapons for the party, or answers to some questions you might have with certain characters, or just hearing a character's specific theme. The most notable thing is that if you're worried about missing out, it's no problem, because you can go back at any point to older locations. The main thing you also get when doing content, main or side, is the party EXP. Of course each character levels up, but party EXP is something new in Rebirth. We'll get more into that later, but the more you get into the game, the more opportunities you get for gaining EXP. There are a lot of minigames, like a ton. Combine this with the town exploring, and you might get a lot of hours in the game. Everyone will have minigames they prefer over others, but the range of choice is huge. I mean, this is the game with the gold saucer, so having a dedicated minigame arena speaks a lot. A special shout out to the battle arena at the saucer, one of my favorite parts. And yes, I did remember Queen's Blood. You get introduced to it at the beginning of Chapter 2, and it's a card game, a really good one at that. It even has its own storyline and mini cards to collect. Just this alone will take up a lot of time. Overall, there was a lot of side content, and I did not even mention all of it. If it seems overwhelming, well, I can't really blame anyone because it is a lot. It's actually something that the game got some criticism for, but the main thing that got criticism was more so the checklist format. Checklist format is not a 100% bad thing per se, but the game did need some more secret stuff to find on your own. Things to maybe branch out a little bit, which I do agree with. I didn't mind the checklist, but I do understand the issues one may have with this format, especially when you go through the menus you see all of this. Now let's get into the battles themselves. Just like with Remake, we have the hybrid system where you have a lot of action, but once you enter tactical mode, it slows everything down while you're going through the menu. Some of it might seem like retreading what I mentioned in the Remake video, but the additions I'm going to mention here do help out. Like before, the main objective is taking the enemy's HP down. You start out using normal attacks, which usually get it done. These ones are just pressing the attack button. In battles, you can block and dodge. You can now do a perfect block where, with good timing, you could take 0 damage. Of course, you have to keep watch of the enemy's animations, but once you do, you can avoid taking damage. One thing I like about it is that while it's timing based, you might actually perfect guard more than you expect to. Certain fights have a lot of attacks that even with guarding every now and then, you might accidentally perfect guard, so it's not super strict either. This goes into the dodging. Just like before, you could dodge enemy attacks, but the way it works here is better. The dodging before was okay. Here, they took the feedback and made the dodge so much more, to the point where you can dodge and do an attack in the same motion. Both the perfect guarding and dodging can also pressure an enemy. This means if you do a move which has heavy stagger, the meter will rise up much faster. Once again, the stagger system is here, and once the meter fills up, the enemy is put in a vulnerable state where it cannot attack. This is the ideal time to do heavy damage on them. With how in this game you can stagger enemies a little easier than before, it's always important to do that. With each character, they all have a special skill you can use. Even though you have a party of 3, you only have full control over one party member at a time unless you switch, though each party member has a different skill and they all play different. Cloud is the swordsman, but he can switch modes where he does more damage while gaining a counterattack. Only thing is his movement is a lot slower. Red 13, who is playable, is one who builds up a vengeance gauge. The more you get, the more time he has under its effect. The effect being higher damage and speed, while being able to absorb health from enemies. The best part now is you have more party members to swap in and out, to the point where they give you party preset options. Once again, just like with Remake, I have to give bonus points to Tifa, whose combat has gotten even better. The moves she does are really cool and fit her style, and she has abilities that are easy to combo into. One thing to note, however, back in Remake, people were disappointed with how Red 13 was not playable. Well, in Rebirth, it's Vince and Sid that are not playable, which means we will see more of them in Part 3. Unfortunate, but at least they told us ahead time before the game came out. With Tactical Mode, you have to build the ATB meter, which is divided into segments. You do this by doing basic attacks. Most actions take up 1 bar, but some can take up 2 bars. Whenever you have the ATB filled up, this is where you can do abilities, magic, or items. Abilities could be like a heavier attack, a special type of healing, seeing what enemy stats look like, and more. There's a lot that goes into abilities, and though they can turn a fight around quick, which makes them so good, just remember to check how many bars an ability takes before you take action. It's a nice dilemma to have, because once the action has taken place, you lose the bar. This lets you give out commands to other party members of ATB as well, since every time you go to tactical mode, it slows everything back down, making commands easier to use, so strategy is key. Something that was added to tactical mode was the folio system. I mentioned party EXP before, and the more party EXP you get, the more abilities unlocks in folios, SP being the thing to use when unlocking nodes. They are used to unlock dual text, abilities, and other stuff, but the dual text being the big highlight. There are lots of combinations for them, so each party member can use a dual tech with each other, if it's unlocked of course. Using dual techs in battle boiled down to using ATB moves. This is indicated by the pips on each character during combat. Once you have enough for both characters, then you can use it. Best part is each dual tech has an effect of some kind. Some may extend stagger time, some give 0 MP cost for a time, and more. It's always ideal whenever you can to use them, because the damage output is generally really good. Something else you can unlock with folios is the synergy moves. These moves were originally tested out in the Yuffie DLC, but here they are refined more. Some of them are attacks, counters, or launching someone into the air. If you check the menus, they give descriptions of all of them, and it's great to use them. Speaking of, air combat has gotten an upgrade. There is no dedicated jump button, but in general the air combat is better. I mentioned how you can use synergy to jump up to enemies, or for someone like Cloud, you could use his blade beams when dodging. There are many more ways for taking out flying enemies, so you don't have to worry this time around. One thing to note with the folios, these can be reset anytime you get the points back, so if there was something you needed in a setup, you can get it by doing this. Like before, you have various magic that you can use during combat, and whenever a magic levels up, you can use whichever one you want. So even if you have Thundaga, you could still use Thunder, which is good. Items can also be used used in combat like potions, phoenix downs, etc. We also have the limit breaks. These are special moves you can do at any time once you have the limit gauge maxed out, and they do not require any ATB to use. You just have to go into tactical mode and it's available. The limit breaks vary for each character, but they all have good uses. One more thing you have in combat are the summons. The summon can appear and you have control over it. It mainly does its auto moves, but once you have ATB, you could use its special moves in tactical mode. Then after a certain amount of time, it does its finishing move before leaving. Summons once again are unlocked in the VR missions. You beat the fight, you can use it. Each fight has its own gimmick, and they are not easy. Finding the summon crystals in the regions do help in lowering the difficulty, but it is still tough regardless. When defeating enemies in combat, you get experience points to level up while also getting AP and SP. AP is used to unlock at higher levels in materia. SP is used with weapon unlocks and folios. As your weapons upgrade with SP, you also get more materia slots to equip. I mentioned magic earlier, but materia is the main stuff you will be using. This is what lets you use magic and certain abilities. Also, it's important in hard mode where items cannot be used. Just like before, each weapon has an ability you can use. When you use it enough, you can then use it on any other weapon. This is great because you can learn many abilities, and it helps create builds. Some weapons are stronger with physical attacks, some are stronger with magic attacks. It's something that helps the combat a lot. A new feature added to the game was the item transmuter. Throughout the world, you will collect many materials. These materials are used to create items. These items can be potions, armors, or accessories. It might not seem like much, but it can help out if you need something quick. The item transmuter also has its own leveling system. It's something that I was not even expecting, but it's pretty good. Another place you can get equipment and items are the various shops in the world. Some also have materia. Some might not even have a shopkeeper because you can get it from a vending machine. I still question how you can get a potion from a vending machine, but you know what? It's fine. I'm glad they carried over the sales feature from Remake where during the story, certain machines have items at a reduced price. They are great because there is usually a bench beside it. These are used to rest up. When you first get to a region, you will find stops. These are also used to rest up. In order to actually use it, you have to follow the chocobo and use a cushion. Once you're at a certain point in the game though, you don't really need them since you can just fast travel to an inn and get rest there. One other place you can get items is a gold saucer. With GP you can get exclusive items there, like skill books, Queen's Blood cards, etc. It's great because in the OG game, you were able to win things, and you could do the same here. I know I mentioned it before, but the side content in the game is great. Along with the exploring stuff, you also have the VR missions, and at the start they serve as a tutorial. I enjoyed that they give each character their own one so you could try out the basics of each of them. And as the game goes, you unlock more fights. The brutal challenges are something wild, and with the battle square at the saucer, there are even more. Plus some more for the post-game. They all require a good amount of strategy if you want to complete them. And there is more, but we will be here a while if I try to mention all of it. Something you don't have to worry about in the game is the music. This game's music, what a soundtrack. They literally put everything into the soundtrack and it shows. I remember thinking Remake's OST was great. They added even more here. It was stated they added 400 new tracks to the game, with a lot of genres as well. That is a lot of work and something that I feel shows when you're playing it. Whether it's the battle themes, exploring, or even the VR themes, it's all great and nice to listen to. My favorite track in the game is easy for me. It's the Mount Corel theme when you're going on it. Every time I hear it, it brings the hype. Even though I've heard it many times, it still gives that same feeling. Overall, the music in Rebirth is amazing and I love it. I think it's safe to say that I very much love this game. It has the template that connected with me the most. Great combat with strategies, good exploration, and a lot of side content. And while this is only part 2 of a trilogy, I still find myself enjoying it. Yes, just like with part 1, there are a lot of questions that need answers. I have a good feeling that we will get that in the finale of this trilogy. It's hard to believe it was 2015 since that first trailer. I am intrigued to see how it will end up. I, for one, cannot wait until the day they return. Until then, I could say that FF7 Rebirth is a journey I loved playing. Thank you all for watching the video. If you like this video and want to see more, check out the other videos on the channel. Thank you for watching, and I will see you on the next video.